Hey guys, this is Grandmaster Eugene Perelshteyn. We're back trying to refute some of Gotham Chess popular openings. Today, the Dutch d4 f5. Now, some people want to get the Dutch. They start with the French move order, which is e6, and then they want to play. But in this case, we are going to try to, Black rather is going to try to play f5, and we want to prevent this move e6. My recommendation is don't play c4, play this very cunning move, bishop to g5, immediately pitting this e7 pawn, making it quite difficult for him to develop. Now, what can Black play? The two typical moves here are knight f6, followed by just developing, or Black can immediately harass the bishop. This is going to be another move, h6, that we're going to take a look at. Now, the reason why I like bishop on g5 is whenever you see this move knight f6, I want to recommend just to take and double the pawns. They usually take ef, e3, d5. They go for this double pawn strong structure with the two bishops. And here you have to know a classic way to attack this structure. First, you put the bishop on d3, then you put the queen on f3. You see how both the bishop and the queen are working together, harassing that pawn on f5, queen d7, and then another classic way, you put the knight on e2. The knight is a vital player. It could later come to either f4 or g3. And one typical line can be played like this: knight c6, a3 just to stop knight b4, castles, h4, grabbing space, and ideally we want to put the pawn on h5. They typically prevent us. We play g3. You see, we're going very slow positional bind on them, putting our pawns on these beautiful squares. And Black has no counterplay. For instance, let's say they play king b8, knight d2, knight e7, trying to prepare this defensive line. We castle queenside, g6, king b1. And after, let's say, waiting move, I just want to illustrate the clear plan. You put the rook on c1, you're going to put the knight on f4, and you're going to break with c4. For instance, rook c1, c6, knight f4, and pretty much on any move, like bishop h6, you break with c4. White has nice, clear advantage. So this is if they play knight f6 on move 2. We're going to take it and go for this setup. Now, the most common move I see, especially at low-rated players, is this move h6, asking the bishop his intention. What are you going to do in g5? We play bishop h4, setting up a really cool trap. g5 is very logical to try to play f4 next. We play e3, and the trap is rather primitive, but a lot of people still fall for this. G takes h, mate. That's one of the drawbacks of playing the Dutch, specifically because of this mating idea. As a result, after e3, they have to play knight f6. We're going to drop back, bishop g7, knight can go to c3. The pawn on c2 is fine. There is no need to put the pawn on c3. They play d6, and then now is the star move of our setup, bishop to c4, 𝐥𝐤𝐤. We're stopping him from castling. We're trying to induce this d5 pawn push, and it's not so easy for Black to play. If they try to play e6 here, we're going to play h4, undermining that side of the board, weakening him up, and now h5. f4 square is ours. Knight has easy play. So this is not recommended for Black. And if they play this move d5 or c6, we're doing quite well. d5, we're simply going to retreat the bishop to probably b3, although d3 square is okay as well. And if they play c6, being flexible, we're going to play h4. Again, classic plan of undermining that pawn, h5, and we're doing great. This expansion never does anything Good for black, it only creates more pawn weaknesses, because here you're going to play a3, and if d5, just look at all these dark squares. Knight g2, knight f4, and knight d3. The other knight can go to e2 and f4, and the bishop can come back to c2 after c3 is played. So the theme here is dark square domination. And if they play moves like queen c7, another flexible move, we simply play knight g2. One grandmaster game, for instance, went e5, pawn takes, and now I love queen d3. Again, you guys kind of get the theme here, is the king belongs on the queen side. If b5, bishop b3, knight a6, grandmaster 𝐦𝐤𝐤𝐿 played castle long, bishop d7, and now queen d6. We welcome endgames. Why? Because white has very nice bishops, nice pressure on the d file, and black is overextending with these pawns e5, h6 potentially becoming targets. So this is what we do here. So going back to this line one more time, after d4, f5, bishop g5 is the critical idea. If knight f6 we take, e6 is never possible, and as a result, they typically play h6, here g5, e3, setting up this queen h5 mate threat. And after knight f6, top and mate, we go bishop g3. Remember the plan, to undermine with h4 and try to lure him by playing knight c3, bishop c4 into this d5. Yeah, so this e6 is quite an annoying move because it stops our plan. So if you guys don't mind playing against the French, then e4 is definitely not a bad idea. But if d4 is your repertoire and you don't really play e4 and move 1, then this could be quite annoying. Now, my recommendation against this move is to play g3. Now, yes, you are allowing this Dutch, but you're not allowing the Leningrad Dutch, where they go here, here, and here. So now we're going to stop this fianchetto plan altogether. And I believe white is already quite comfortable here. For example, knight here, we can play c4, right? And again, g6 with the pawn on e6 feels like a time waste. And you can never play b6 because the bishop gets stuck. So your only setup here is the stonewall setup, right? And against the stonewall setup, you have many good plans. One of them is simply knight f3, d5, castles, bishop d6. You can play this move b3, castles, bishop a3. The key in the stonewall is to trade dark square bishops. Why? Because once these bishops are traded, this square becomes yours. Make sense? For instance, queen e7, and then you can play queen c1. Queen can go to b2, very much protecting our knight. And these guys are not as easy to develop. For instance, knight bd7, queen b2, and b6, trying to put the bishop there. Rook a can go to c1, bishop can go to b7, and here white is always a tiny bit better. Let's say rook f to d1. So not a whole big of an advantage here for white, but it's just a more comfortable position. And your long-term plan, very instructive plan, is either to play b4, right, trying to take away c5, or knight c2, e1, d3, trying to fight for the e5 outpost.
Hey, check this video out to make sure that you get more important information to bring your chess to the next level.